Hey everybody, it's Emily from Life Sew Savory, and something is reflecting off my face there. Anyway, I'm here and we're gonna sew today. We're gonna do a quick little part of a project because I'm busy in the middle of working on the full project for this, and I wanna film two specific parts of this project, and so I'm gonna do them live for you guys. So. Today we are working, actually this whole week, I'm working on redoing my kids' sweatpants pattern. It is a unisex pattern, so it's good for anybody. It's just kind of a loose fit sweatpants, and it was time to add new sizes because my boys are growing out of the sizes that I currently was offering. So you benefit by getting larger sizes as my kids grow. So if you saw yesterday, I sewed a pair for Rose on the Brother Facebook page with Angela, and we had a super great time doing that together, and I'm gonna show you those sweatpants that I made with on that show, and you can, if you wanna see from start to finish making the sweatpants, you can head over to Brother Sew's Facebook page and see that post. I've also shared it on this I've also shared it on this post or on my page, so you can scroll back down to and check that out. So Arnell saw those, I see, and so she was just commenting how cute they turned out. I'm gonna show you those, and then what I'm gonna show you today are just two specific parts to one of the boys' pairs that I'm working on. So the plan is that on Friday, I will be re-releasing this pattern in sizes 2 to 16, which is going to be waist sizes approximately 20 inches to 33 inches. So I'm hoping that's gonna give you guys a whole lot more range of sewing for your kids. And of course, you can always go start with the waist size and then adjust for length depending on the fit of your kids. In fact, my two boys have the same size waist right now, so I am cutting theirs the same size, but just adjusting different lengths. So you're gonna get on Friday, you'll get to see two different pocket options. You're gonna see 3 different ways to finish the bottom of these pants, and then you're also going to get the expanded pattern. So if you need one of the larger sizes that is not currently available, just go ahead and bookmark that page or make yourself a note on a sticky note. I am a huge fan of sticky notes. To come back on Friday and check out all those details from my page. So you can go ahead and make yourself a note for that, and then we're gonna be sewing, we're gonna be re-releasing that on Friday. So what I'm working towards is making my kids all new sweatpants to show you the range of sizes, plus try out the new larger sizes and get that pattern already. So yesterday I sewed a pair for Rose with one of the pocket options and bottom cuffs. You guys are gonna love this if you didn't already see it. But look at how cute these sweatpants are. So I totally was scrap busting when I made these, and I went ahead and chopped the pattern in 2 places and then added these fun knee panels. And if I had enough fabric, I would have put 2 layers of fabric in the knees to reinforce it, but I didn't because again, I was using up scraps. So this is just a single layer. I top stitched around the bottom and the top of this, and then I added the outside pocket. So the pattern is gonna come with 2 pocket options, one being this outside pocket. So it's simply a pocket piece that you stitch on the outside of the pants, but how adorable is this? And then these are the bottom cuffs, the cuff option on the bottom of the sweatpants. So we are going to have this as one of the modeled options on Friday, and today we're going to talk about a different way to put in pockets, okay, in the side seam, and then I'm also going to show you how to do the waistband. Okay, so this waistband is a simple fold over waistband. We put the elastic in, and then I love stitching around one time, as you can see here, to really add a fun detail, and then also hold that elastic so that it does not slide or move at all. I threw a tag on the back so she knows, although obviously with these big fancy pockets on the front. This isn't too hard to tell the front from the back, but I match the stripes pretty well, if I do say so myself. And you know, I don't always do a good job stripe matching. And then we have these cute pairs. So this is a size 5 in the width, and then a size 8 in the length for my tall, thin daughter. And the 2 measurements that I took on my kids to make these while they were at school was, of course, a low waist. So, you know, just above the hip bones, not a high waist. They're not going to be wearing their sweatpants up there. So a low waist, and then I take the outer side. So the inseam is interesting because these aren't fitted, right? The crotch of the sweatpants is going to be lower than their actual. So for me, the inseam measurement isn't super exact because I'm not exactly sure where this part of the pants is going to fall on Rose, right? How close to her actual inseam will this part of the pants be? So what I like to do is, when they're wearing a pair of pants already, start at the top of their pants and then measure down on their ankle bone or below their ankle bone or how long you want. So get a nice low waist measurement, and then take that outer seam, and then you can go ahead and on your pattern, or before you cuff or hem the bottom, you can measure this part and then make sure you have long enough. So when I was doing Rose, I had my sticky note here with their measurements, a 23-inch waist, so we got that covered, and then 27 inches down, and these pants are 27.5 from top to bottom of cuff. So pretty good, if I do say so myself, and they fit her perfectly. So I've taken the same measurements on the boys, low waist, and then that side seam from top of waistband to bottom, kind of where I want my pants to hit. So let's talk about what we're doing on this second pair of sweatpants. So same pattern, works great for boys and girls. Again, it is a looser fit, so you're gonna see that in the pictures on Friday, and you'll even see that if you click over to the blog post now to check it out. It is so hilarious. It's my son Max. I bet he's 5 in the photos, maybe even 4. Super tiny, and he's with one of his best buds who was a girl at the time, who was just a few months older than him. And the pictures are so, so cute. So if you want to see my son when he was tiny and adorable before he grew up to be a preteen, which they just keep growing, how do I stop them? You should click over and see it. It's adorable. I took super fun photos of the 2 of them together, and I did a boy and a girl version of photos then to show you that it works for both. But what I was gonna say, if you wanted a little slimmer fit, you can size down, you can take a little bit in on the legs. Super easy to adjust. This is just a basic pattern outline, get you started, and hopefully in a whole range of sizes, which is gonna give you more variety. So for the boys, or for Jack's pair, I have cut 2 legs of the gray, okay? I've cut 4 pocket pieces. This is the inside side seam pocket option. So again, 2 pocket options on the pattern. And then we've got waist elastic. And then for him, I'm gonna put elastic in the ankles because he likes that kind of style. So we've got 2 pieces of elastic for the ankles, okay? So when you're measuring your side seam, make sure that you account for, you know, the 3/4 inch that you're gonna either fold over for the hem or for the elastic casing. If you're adding a cuff, you actually remove 2 inches. But the regular pattern has enough fabric for the elastic or a hem. And then in fact, if you're doing the cuff, you'll trim it back a little bit. And that's all marked on the pattern pieces from there. So I've actually done one of the side pockets. So I'm gonna show you this. So it's a little bit tricky because there's no side seam on this pattern. It's just, right, one big piece for each side of the pants. But if you want to put in side pockets, how do we do that? It's actually not that tricky. And you can see here, I've already done one of them. Okay, so we did some understitching thread to help it lay nicely. And then on the inside, I've got it pinned to the front because when we do that waistband, we're actually gonna fold it over and then the top is going to be covered by that waistband on the inside. So there is the first one. We're going to walk through the second one together, okay? And then we're going to sew these pants together and put in the waistband because I just want to show you that part one more time, okay? So that is what we're going to be doing today. I've got my pocket here that I'm going to show you how to put in the pants. So let's talk about a couple of markings before we get started. So let me just turn this down slightly so you can see. So the first thing we want to do is mark on the side of the pants where we are going to be putting this pocket, because like I said, again, it's just one big wide from front to back all the way around the side. So in order to find out where we're going to put our pocket, we're going to fold over the front on the back. Okay, so I have the back on the bottom, I've folded over the front, and we're gonna fold it over so that it's an inch off, okay, so that the back is an inch wider from the front. And if you folded it exactly in half, sometimes what ends up is because the back is bigger than the front, your pockets end up a little bit to the back, and it's kind of awkward to be reaching into pockets that are just even slightly towards the back. So in order to accommodate for that, we're going to stop our fold 1 inch from being even, okay? And then you're gonna mark that fold at that 1 inch place, okay? So now when I open this up, I have my fabric marked at the fold, but not quite the half, okay? So you can see that here. And then you can go ahead and fold it again. And we have that marked because we're gonna be cutting open the side just a little bit where we need to insert our pocket. But before we do that, let's go ahead and sew around our pocket. So on the pocket piece, let me grab that. On the pocket piece, you have different sizes for the different sizes. That's kind of a redundant statement. But you have the smaller sizes, the medium sizes. I'm using the second to largest size, and then there was one bigger size on here that I trimmed off. But what I want to point out is these markings here, and this is the opening. So this is where you're going to mark, or you're going to leave open when you're sewing around the pocket piece. We're going to sew, we're not going to open, sew across the top, and we're not going to sew across here. So if you want to transfer those markings to your pattern, you can. You can also see it's this straight, perfectly straight edge from the bottom of this notch to this point right here, and that is what we're not going to be sewing. Okay, so I'm going to sew around the bottom curve, up the back, and then just this little top of the notch here. We don't have to close this because again, the waistband is going to be folded over on there. So let us come over here and sew. And if you saw yesterday, you saw that I've redone my sewing table a little bit. So I'm still trying to work out like what's the best camera angles and things like that for this new setup. So bear with me a little bit, and hopefully you can see me and see what I'm working on, and I can still sew. So trying to work through that. So I'm gonna start on this long side that we're gonna sew. The pattern, like always, has a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I would say on this pocket, I'm just sewing a very narrow 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you wanna sew more, it will not hurt. But I'm not trimming a lot of fabric off as I go around. And remember, we're gonna stop here at this notch. Okay, so now we have sewn all the way around there. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is just sew up here. I don't know that you would really need to, but there's no reason to leave that open. And then just in case things are floating around your pocket, it will be enclosed there, okay? So, and then this is the pocket opening that we have going, all right? So that is what we're doing with the pocket. And then we're gonna come back over here. Oh, see my other tripod in the background. I'm busy working on other things. So we have this fold that we created right here. And now let's talk about where we cut this. So I'm gonna use the grid of my mat to line this up because what we wanna do is place the top of this pocket 2 inches down from the top, okay? Because that's going to be part of our, that is going to be part of the waistband that we fold over, okay? So top of the pocket, place on the grid 2 inches down from the top, and then it's about another 1.5 inches down where the notch starts, okay? See, I have this little tab above. So the very top of the pocket, 2 inches down on the grid, and then where the notch starts, where that pattern marking was, you're gonna clip a 1/4 inch tiny little clip. Okay, so super tiny little clip, and then pressing that flat, I'm gonna cut it open in the middle of that clip. So I'll show you here in a moment, but the tops and bottoms are of this opening are just gonna have a tiny little clip. So let me see. Okay, so you can see that I clipped across and then I clipped down, and you can see at the top, see that just little, that was the little original clip. So there's a little T, a long line, maybe it's a big I, because it has a little clip at the top and the bottom. Okay, so you have that, and then our next thing is to match right sides together with the pocket. So I need to turn this pocket right side out. And with right sides together, we're going to pin the pocket in place. So I like to start with the top and the bottom seam, and I'm gonna place those right in that notch that I created. And then you can use a pin or a clip to do that. And again, I've got the right side of the pocket facing the right side of the pants. So we're just putting that notch right there. And this should fit perfectly because we just cut this opening. So remember to be pretty exact when you are cutting along those pants. And I just do the top and the bottom and then one on each of the sides. Okay, so that's gonna hold that in place. And then what we need to do is sew all the way around, and I'll talk you through how you pivot on the ends, but we're gonna sew all the way around, and then you're actually going to understitch the seam allowance knot. We didn't stitch the seam allowance to the pants. I understitched the seam allowance to the pocket with a really narrow stitch. So there's actually no stitching on the outside of the pants, but there is stitching on the inside of the pocket right there, okay? So we're gonna do those 2 steps right now. So let me move this over here. I love this cozy corner of my office because it has so many windows and beautiful light, but sometimes when I'm, at the camera, it's like too bright and there's glare everywhere and kind of things are going crazy. So I just want to make sure we'll adjust the curtains or the blinds as needed. Okay, so this one for the sewing allowance, I pretty much just use the edge of my foot, which is probably closer to 1/4 than 3/8. And I like to just start sewing in the middle of one of the sides because it's nice and easy. And then we have a little bit to get used to before we get to the edge. And it is a little bit trickier around that point, although not too tricky. Okay, so I'm using the edge of my presser foot, about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sewing down the side of the pocket and the pants. And then I'm gonna sew all the way until my needle is on the seam of the pocket. Okay, and once that's on there, I'm gonna leave it down, and then I'm gonna pivot and sew back up the other side of the pocket. So the bottom of the pocket is more of a point, okay, because we pivoted on there. And then we do have to check when we're all done that we got both layers on those points. And sometimes that I had to go back when I did that other pocket that I just showed you because I didn't quite get both the notches in my seam. So we'll go back and check that here once we get all the way around. Okay, but let's look in the top and bottom notch. Looked like I did a pretty good job. So there is the notch. You can see I pivoted right there on the point, and both layers of fabric are fully in the seam. And then down here, I have one little spot that I'm gonna fix. See how close, which side is it? Right here, see how close the stitching is to that notch. So I'm just gonna go and with that side up, just take a little bit wider seam allowance there so that there's not a hole in the bottom of our pocket, because that's no good. Now the understitching will help because it will fold it over, and but we just want to make sure we've caught that, okay? So now you have this lump on the outside of your pants, and you can simply tuck them to the inside. And then because we did right sides together, you have this nice view of finished fabric. Okay, so now we're going to do the understitching, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this seam allowance here and keep it folded towards the pocket, and I'm gonna stitch all the way around, stitching on the pocket. So you're keeping the seam allowance folded towards the pocket, not folded towards the pants, fold it towards the pocket, and we're gonna stitch around. And again, I'm going to start on kind of this flat, straight side, and I'm just using probably a 1/8 inch seam allowance from that seam that I just sewed. Oh, and I will mention, I'm not using a stretch stitch at all for this sewing because there's plenty of room for the pockets to not really be stretchy. But you could use a zigzag, but I'm simply just using a straight stitch for all of this sewing. For this part, I will use the serger. I would use a serger or a stretch stitch for all the other construction of the pants, but not for this part right here. Okay, so do a little back stitch, and then I'm stitching very close to that seam that I just sewed, keeping the seam allowance folded over towards the pocket. So right now I'm stitching through the pocket and through the seam allowance. And then again, when we get to the top of the pocket, we have that seam that we're gonna pivot on. Okay, so you kind of park it, lift, and then readjust, get all the other fabric out of the way, and then stitch down the other side. And I'm, again, stitching on the pocket fabric and keeping the seam allowance tucked towards that pocket fabric. And this will just create a little bit smoother lines and you want to make sure you don't stitch on the pocket. Keep that pocket out of the way. All right, so let's take a look at how this looks here. And okay, so there is the pocket that's now understitched. Okay, you can see my stitching along there, but it really is on the inside of the pocket and not on the outside, but it just gives a nice finish. So the other thing we want to do now is we're going to pin, see this pocket flap, we're going to turn it towards the front. So make sure you know which is the front and which is the back of your pants. We're going to tuck it towards the front because we're going to then sew that into the waistband. So I just used that pin we had on the side seam. We don't need that anymore. And you can see here, now it's pinned to the front. Okay, there's my pin, and then there's the back. And so then that will keep that pocket towards the front of the pants. Oh, Kim, did you ask what I was sewing? Sorry. Yes, we're making pants with a pocket in the side seam. All right. So the next thing that we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to do the waistband on these. And so this would be a little bit different steps than if I was starting from the top. but we're just going to sew the waistband. So the first thing we need to do is sew the pants together. So I have the front and the back, and we're gonna match that to the front and the back on the other side. So back crotch seam to back crotch seam with right sides together, and we're gonna sew this curved seam. So I'm gonna do that right now. If you are new to sewing or not comfortable not pinning, you might wanna go ahead and put a couple pins in before you sew. But with this fabric, I usually just line it up and then make sure it's kept lined up and just sew away. So that's one of the ways that I kind of save time as I sew. And I know not everyone likes that, but for me, it helps me to create things for my kids and not take too much time. So you can pin or not pin, but we're gonna line up the front now and sew the same thing. Okay, so a little readjust. Again, you're sewing all of this with a serger or a stretch stitch because these seams will get wear and tear. And I'm making these out of sweatshirt fleece for these sweatpants, and it does have a little bit of stretch. So we have to make sure that we have some stretch in our seams so that this pants can also stretch a little bit, okay? So again, you have your pinned pockets to the front, and you have these sweatpants. So I'm not gonna sew up the inseams. I'm not gonna show you the ankle finishes. You'll have to come back on Friday for all of those details, or go back and see what I did yesterday. So let's talk about the pattern again one more time. So how can you get the pattern? So it is in the link in the description of this video. It currently is only sizes 2 to 10, but if you need a bigger size, make a mark on your calendar or write a Post-it note. Friday, I will be releasing 3 more sizes to get you up to size 16. I'm sewing one of these new larger sizes right now for my sons. And that will be released first thing Friday morning with pictures of my kids in their new sweatpants and showing you the larger sizes, plus a few other updates and tweaks to the pattern. But if you just need smaller sizes, you can go ahead and download it now. It's not a problem. It is totally the same pattern. So the tweaks are so minor. The one thing the new pattern will include is a pattern piece for those outside pockets. It has the inside pockets like I'm sewing here, but if you want to see the outside pockets. And in just a minute when I do get up, I will show you guys once again my daughter's pair that I made. So these, we're kind of making pants with all the options, and these are going to have the inside pockets in the side seam, as well as elastic in the cuffs for this particular version. So, okay, so now I've opened this up, and you can see that the back of the pants are a little bit higher, so that's right. But what I want you to notice is that these pockets are in a really good placement. So remember how we didn't put them exactly on the middle of our pattern piece? Because the back of your pants are always bigger than the front of your pants. So we put them 1 inch towards the front, which actually is going to have them in a really good spot on the side of the pants. We don't want these, if they were 1 inch back, which I've done in pajama pants, your pockets are then just a little bit behind you, and it's super awkward to reach inside. So we have pockets that are in a good spot and hopefully cozy and a good size. You can actually put some things in that pocket right there. So waistband, let's sew that. So this is just a simple fold over elastic casing, and we have 1 inch elastic that we're gonna be threading through there. And I've already pre-cut this to the right size that my son needs. So I like to fold over about 1.25, 1.25 inches or so for the casing. You can always use, like I am, you can see I'm using the elastic for a guide. Now here I am at this pocket, okay? Can you see that pocket? It's pinned towards the front, but I do want to make sure, one, I need to take that pin out, and two, that I get that all enclosed in there. So I'm going to sneak in, grab that pin, and then I'm actually going to put the pin back in so that it holds the pocket in place and everything lays nicely. Okay, you can also use a measuring tape to make sure that you're folding over the right amount of fabric. And then here we are again with this other pocket. So make sure we're folding over the right amount. I'm going to take out the pin. Otherwise, the pin might get stuck inside your elastic casing, and that's no fun. That would be owie, actually, if you're wearing clothes with a pin inside. Okay, so now we have the pockets pinned into this casing, so that's going to hold them all in place and ready to sew. You could sew this around with a zigzag, a straight stitch, your cover stitch machine, lots of options. I'm just going to go back to the sewing machine and use the same straight stitch that I've been using. And again, this is not going to get a lot of stretch on this seam because it's going to have elastic inside. So when it's being pulled on, what's going to stretch? The elastic, not the actual fabric, because this is quite a bit bigger than your child's actual waist and should be at the same size or a little bit bigger than their actual hips. So we don't need to make sure that this actually stretches, but we do need to make sure that the elastic inside actually stretches. So I'm using a straight stitch. You could use a zigzag. I'm using a straight stitch just because I think it looks best on the outside of this pattern or on these pants. But you could definitely use your cover stitch or a decorative stitch or a zigzag, whatever you want, okay? So I'm just sewing around on the bottom of this fold over, making sure when I go over those pockets, that is a little bit of a bigger bump. So making sure that I had everything lined up, and we have 2 of those pocket tops to sew over. So you just make sure that, you know, kind of everything's laid flat as you go over. And then remember, when you come back around to where you started, you want to make sure that you leave at least a 2-inch, if not slightly larger opening where we're going to thread the elastic through. Okay, so I do that on the back side of the pants. And I have here, take these clips out. Okay, so now we have the back of the pants, the front of the pants, the pockets in the side, and you can see how they're just below the waistband. Okay, and then there are the pants. So we need to now thread the elastic, which I've pre-cut. Okay, so we're going to thread that through the opening. And around the inside of the pants, and this is going to gather up the top of our pants a little bit. So if you wanted to use a wider elastic, sometimes I do think like 1.5, especially on these bigger sizes, 1.5-inch elastic looks really snazzy. You'd want to make sure that you added the appropriate amount to the top of your pants, an extra 1/2 inch or whatever size elastic you're using before you sew the casing, or while you're cutting out your pants, in fact, okay? So it's made for 1-inch elastic. I like to, before this tail gets pulled inside the casing and lost forever, I like to pin it here so that as I'm pulling the elastic through, I don't accidentally pull that inside, because that does happen. Okay, and then we're coming back out, making sure that we didn't twist or turn the elastic as we were threading it through. You do want to make sure that it stays nice and flat. And now I have my 2 ends, and I'm going to overlap them by about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. Pull some extra out here so that I can overlap those. And I am going to use a zigzag. For some reason, I always like to zigzag my elastic together. You might have a better method. Go for it. No right or wrong, but I will zigzag on one of those tails. Then I'm going to cut my elastic and I'm going to move over that 1/2 inch and zigzag on the other tail so that both are sewed down nice and flat. And I'll show you this in a minute. Okay, so there's that side, nice and flat. And then we can go ahead and pull it inside the pants. Okay, so there's the top, there's the pocket in the side. It's looking fabulous. So we have 2 more things to finish the waistband. The first is to sew close the turning or the threading opening that we left. So you can go ahead and just stitch that opening closed, that 2 inches that you left. Okay, and then the other thing we're going to do is just like on the smaller pair that I sewed yesterday, I'm going to actually run a row of stitches down the center of this elastic to keep everything in place, and I think it just gives an extra little finished look to the pants. So we need to make sure the elastic is spread evenly through the fabric, so stretch it as much as it goes, kind of let it go, see where that fabric falls, and that should be pretty even elastic distribution. So at this point, once your elastic is distributed evenly, I'm gonna throw my pins down my heating vent. But I'm gonna put pins on the sides and the front and the back. And then as we're sewing, we will know that that's the even distribution of the fabric. So you can see that I'm gonna be pulling. Let's see, we'll start in the back. So I'm going to be sewing down the center of this elastic casing. And what we need to do is pull the fabric flat so that we don't sew any bumps or puckers in the fabric. I'm going to lengthen my stitch to 3 from the 2.5 that I was using, just to give it more of a top stitch feel. And you can see here I'm pulling on both the front and the back to make sure that I have flat fabric here to work with, okay? So we want any gathers in the fabric to be created by the elastic, not by my stitching right here. So sometimes I like to pull from the back and the front. It just helps keep it a little bit flatter. And I'm sewing right down the center of the elastic casing. I didn't really measure or mark this. I'm kind of eyeballing it, but just going over those. And then from pin to pin is where I'm stretching and sewing. And then when I get to each pin, I'm adjusting from there. So you can just see here, we have 4 quarters. We've done 3 of them. We'll do 1 more, and then I'll kind of show you how it looks. And then these pants aren't completely finished, but for those of you who missed the beginning, I will show you one more time the pants that I do have finished that are adorable and so cute, and then talk through just one more time where you can get this pattern, what it looks like now, and what it's going to look like on Friday. So let me go ahead and pull these pins out, clip a couple threads here. Okay. So let me go ahead and show you what we've got right now. Okay, so far, here are the sweatpants, and you can just see how adding that extra row of stitching really adds a cute detail in there, and I think makes the sweatpants look a little bit more professional and a little bit more finished than if we just left them. Okay, and then again we have the side pockets here for the pants. So I gotta finish the bottom and the elastic cuff, but I'm gonna do that later. But I did want to show you one more time here. These are the ones that I already finished, okay, for rows. So we did some scrap busting where we color blocked and pieced the knees together to save fabric. And then I also added this outside pocket. So if you're looking for this outside pocket, that will be added to the pattern on Friday. Right now the pattern simply has this inside side pocket, and it has the sizes 2 to 10. So the larger sizes, this outside pocket template, and a few other tips will be added to the post including the new pattern pieces on Friday. So if you want any of those, you want the larger pattern, just make a mark to head back to that same post. It'll be in the same spot. I'm just gonna update it on Friday, but for now, all the smaller sizes are there. The inside pocket, the cuffs, the elastic bottom, both of those options are there. And we're gonna see how it looks on all three of my kids as well. So look for new pictures, updated pattern, couple updated pocket templates, and then new sizes for the sweatpants. So today I just wanted to talk you through the side pockets and the waistband, and then we'll have everything else ready for you on Friday. So let me know if you have any questions. I hope this pattern will work for you and they'll be able to grab it and sew it up for your kids. I will note that this fabric, this sweatshirt fleece, is super, super soft, and both of these, plus the one for my son, which is a different fleece, is from Raspberry Creek Fabrics. They have the best sweatshirt fabric, and they don't pay me to say that, but I do love their sweatshirt fleece. It has just a little bit of stretch. It's so, so cozy on the inside, and it comes in beautiful prints and colors. So that's where I got the fabric. Those are my tips for today. Check back on Friday for the new pattern, and next week for another fun sewing project. So I'll see you guys later. Hope you have a great rest of your week, and talk to you soon. Bye.